On September 9th, 10:30 a.m., we'll be hosting another live edition of the Scaling Culture podcast with Ashley Goodall, the author of 9 Lies About Work. Register now for your free ticket at connollyowens.com/live or see the show description for the link. September 9th, 10:30 a.m., Ashley Goodall, be there. You're listening to the Scaling Culture podcast, where thought leaders share their experiences building incredible workplace cultures. Kevin Crenshaw is the author of Neverboss, a blueprint guide for empowering leadership. Kevin has been a CEO, a transformation COO, a president, a founder, an executive coach, and a trainer for over 35 years. He thrives in empowering leadership, creating order out of chaos, transforming cultures and companies, turning ordinary workers into extraordinary leaders, and raising an incredible family. And today, he talks to us about that.
Welcome to another episode of Scaling Culture podcast. And today we are very excited to have Kevin Crenshaw with us, the author of the incredible book, Neverboss, which I love. This was great. Kevin, welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. This kind of book popped up. I think actually this came from, I hadn't heard of the book, but Nick, who is our business development lead that works out of the Ukraine, came across this book, sent it over to us. We read it and we're like, oh my God, we have to have Kevin on. This is incredible. So look, Kevin, first tell me a little bit about your background. What led you to writing this book?
Well, this book is really kind of, you mentioned, we talked earlier that your book was cathartic for you. It was a sort of a culmination of everything you did with your business. Incredible story, by the way. Love it.
Thank you.
And I had the same experience with my book. It's a summary of about 40 years of pain, the time it was written. And
Kevin, that was your pain. You were going through that?
Yeah, my pain and the pain of people that I worked with, but also some really amazing experiences. My father started me out teaching me to take initiative, anticipate the need, and you can do whatever you want. And when I was 13 years old, I found myself in a trade show. This is this entire pavilion filled with all these people selling their wares, and my father had this 1,000-ounce silver bar in his booth. He was selling gold and silver bullion. I listened to his sales pitch for a long time, and a flood of people came to the booth. He couldn't handle them all, so people asked me. I was just standing there watching him. What's this silver bar here for? And as a 13-year-old, I started saying, silver is an excellent hedge against inflation. The U.S. government's been regulating the price of silver.
As a 13-year-old?
I listened to my dad give this pitch 100 times. So he didn't tell me I couldn't. So yeah, it's a hedge against inflation. It's about to be deregulated. It's an excellent time to buy silver. And this crowd started gathering more and more and more around this 13-year-old kid who was pitching silver. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, my dad kind of looked over there. He was finished with the couple he'd been talking with. And there was a crowd around me, and he just stepped backwards and leaned against the back of the booth and let me talk. What kind of a parent, what kind of a business owner would let a 13-year-old sell gold and silver bullion to a crowd? Well, a smart one. Are you trying to build? Are you building leaders, or are you selling a product? And so he did that with me.
I love that. And so, what's this book? And I love that it was written in story fashion. So just before we dive into some of the concepts, did you just take negative, positive experience, package them up, and write a story?
Yes. The Neverboss is it's not based on a true story. It's based on 100 true stories.
Okay.
The stories, the situations, they're real from companies around the world. Some I've intervened with and helped to transform. Others are famous stories in the public domain, like Lufthansa, Jürgen Weber, and the transformation, et cetera.
So you would be educated in a single story and say, I'm going to weave that in, right?
Yes. For example, there's a story in there of the everybody's calling in and saying, your software just deleted all the files on my hard drive. And the programmers are saying, no, there's no way that happened. and basically shaming the customer for calling in. And that happened at WordPerfect Corporation. Finally,
Wow.
a client called in, talked with the lead programmer, and said, your software just destroyed all the hard drive files on my hard drive. And the programmer, I heard him. He said, no, that can't happen. The software can't do it. And the guy says, okay, so try these commands on your keyboard. And I watched as the guy lifted his hands off his keyboard and sat back. So these are true stories.
Wow. Well, good for you. And what a great way to pull them all together. So I'm going to start jumping in. I'm so interested to dive deeper into some of these topics. I wanted to start with early on in the story. You really talk about this feedback loop, and I think that's going to be a very powerful message for our audience. Can you dive into the feedback loop, Kevin?
Yes. So my background's in physics.
Okay.
I got a degree in physics, and ultimately every good physicist has to eat. So decided to go into the software industry instead. But one of the things we talk about there is feedback loop. When something happens, if you want a system to improve, the positive or negative result has to be fed back into the system. So if I make a mistake, who feels the pain? I make a mistake, do my workers feel the pain? And more importantly, if the worker makes a mistake, do I feel the pain? Do I step in? Do I rescue them? And a big part of where this came from for me was my wife and I have 10 children. And about
10? Sorry.
Yes, 10 children.
10 of your own children.
Yes, of all our own, one at a time, no twins, no triplets.
Oh my God.
And one is hard because you're the sole source of entertainment. And two's okay because there are two of you, but when you get that third child, you've got to switch from a man-to-man to a zone defense.
What about the 10th? Forget third. I'm at 2. You go to 10. What zone to zone's gone.
Exactly. Well, around 4 or 5, you realize if I micromanage these kids, I'm going to die. There is no way.
I'm going to die. You're right. I'm going to die.
and so it's like, okay, you guys need to feel the pain. So, for example, they come, Mommy, Michael, John's breathing my air, or whatever it is they're saying.
Yeah.
It's like. So finally, we said, okay, new rules, guys. We're going to have an arbitrator system. If you've got a problem, the two of you if somebody's got a problem, the other person picks an arbitrator. They will listen. The other kid will listen to the story and make a decision. And if you don't like the decision, you can appeal it to mom and dad, but it's double or nothing. Whatever the consequence was, it's double or nothing.
I don't know if this is helpful, but I was just watching the new show on Netflix about the mafia, and the commission did the same thing. The mafia, this is great.
Well, yeah, mafia. There's a leadership story for us. Yeah.
You took a play right out of their boat. This is beautiful. Hopefully, the punishment isn't as bad as what the mafia would do.
Hopefully not. But yeah,
so the kids come to us
and say, "Well, I've got this problem," and we would say, "What did the arbitrator say?"
Right.
Oops. Okay, we'll go out and ask somebody. So the idea of pushing authority down to information, we started that with our kids. That concept really became solidified when I worked for David Marquet. The author of Turn the Ship Around, great book, a story of empowering a submarine. And he talked about this all the time, push authority down to information. And I saw that beautifully in your book.
Yeah, and yeah, that's right. The concept of pushing authority close to the bottleneck, close to whoever's closest to the source, closest to the decision, right? Because
the information to the pain.
That to the
person
pain,
feeling the pain. Give them the power to fix it.
And so many don't do that. It goes back up 4 or 5 levels or right up to the C-suite where someone is so disconnected from the pain, right? We make that mistake a lot. Yeah.
So, and we think, why do they do this?
Yeah.
Why do organizations do this?
Mm-hmm.
It's you and I know from experience, it's not as effective. People don't love their jobs as much. And you know what the real surprise is the leaders don't love their jobs as much in an organization like that.
And why do you think they do it? That's a great question. Is it ego? Is it because that's what we know?
Well, David Marquet, I worked with him, set up his speaking gigs, set up packages for him to coach and train and transform companies for a while. It was a great experience. When he spoke, and I do this now too, he would create a word cloud for the audience to respond to. And he would ask this question: why don't leaders give more control to their workers? And so you see words start to pop up on the screen. And early on, you see the word fear. appear, and the word gets bigger and bigger until it dominates the screen. It's fear. They're afraid. They're in an organization that rewards controlling and punishes initiative, and they feel like their necks are on the chopping block if there's any kind of a mistake made. So people in an organization like that begin to work to avoid mistakes, and you cannot become great by trying to avoid mistakes.
You know, I remember back, you know, when I was transitioning our culture to pushing that autonomy down, and then really, you know, I talk about this a lot, is the fear of autonomy of a leader giving autonomy, but there's fear on the other side of receiving it. People are on eggshells saying, oh my God, if I make a bad decision. And that's why we had implemented that decision-making process, 3 quick questions, you know?
Right. And see, what you did there was brilliant, I believe. I've studied organizations around the world, organizations that made the change and succeeded, and organizations that failed and why they failed. But one of the things they always have to do is they have to make it safe and effective to speak up and take action. And the safety it's not just for the leaders. It has to be safe for the workers.
That's right.
I know if I follow these principles, which you laid out beautifully, 3 simple principles. Trying to remember here, is it the right thing for the customer? Is it the right thing for the company? And are you willing to be held accountable for it?
Bam, you got it.
But the beauty of that is the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
If it's simple, if it's easy, people can remember it and they'll take action. And that makes it safe for people to do.
And safe, that is, they have to feel safe that, wow, I feel comfortable and safe to make these decisions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I loved when you talked about asking questions to invite feeling, thinking, and action. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. Well, you mentioned in the book, the role of the boss changes in your book.
Yeah.
And the title of my book hints at that. Neverboss. The goal, the ultimate objective is to not be a boss. Instead, you switch to coaching. And this question has been around for a long time. Which is better, hands-on or hands-off leadership? And I believe that the reality is the best leadership is a process. It moves from hands-on to hands-off as quickly as the people are capable of handling it.
And do you categorize that as servant leader, by the way?
Well, it is servant leadership. And the concept of servant leadership is awesome. The problem with the book, in my opinion, is that it doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. If it's not simple, people won't do it. They can't remember it.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, you know, I'm going to share something here.
Yeah, please.
A screen, and I'll read it. Read what we're saying here. But we call these the leadership steps. And this is the process. And I'm going to answer your question here about questions that think, feel, and act. But this is what we see as a process, from you taking action to them taking action. And you're going to step up, and then you're going to progressively step back and step away as fast as they can handle it. Your job ultimately becomes to do everything that your people can't or won't do until they can. And so you start in this diagram, the very, very level is step 0. You step in, you take over, and you do that only when there's a lack of stability in the organization. And I think I saw this in your story. There's some lack of stability. There's a need to talk with somebody. You step in. You're going to correct and discipline, et cetera. Then, but ideally, when you first start out, you're just telling people, you're creating clarity. If there's a lack of clarity, you have to provide it. So you're going to tell them, assign them things, make the decisions, clarify, give them authority so they know they've got the authority. Then you begin to step beside people instead of stepping up. And this is the level 2, where you're training people. The purpose there is to build their capability. And then you get to this sweet spot, though. And many times when you're working with workers, this is where you start the conversation out, where you're coaching. And the purpose of coaching, as I see it, is to build ownership in these people. And you're going to ask questions, to get them feeling, hey, my favorite thinking, feeling question is, tell me about this. What happened? How do you feel about it? What do you see going on here? And then questions that invite people to take action. Tell me more about EGROW as I'm looking at that. Do you have do you have a plan? Is a question to help them take ownership. And E, grow, is encourage and grow. It's an acronym. GRO coaching is, it's pretty, you hear that a lot out there. What's the goal? What's the reality? O has two dimensions. What are the obstacles and what are the options? And then what would you like as your way forward? So this is just a structured way to encourage them, let them, this is what we love, what we're seeing. And let's talk about what the goal is. What's the reality? The difference between the goal and the reality is the gap. What are the obstacles and options, and what way forward would you like to choose? And this is a structured way that almost anybody in the organization can coach each other. So, that's all about the coaching level, the third level.
Yep.
And then ultimately you get to this sweet spot, which is beautiful. And I think I see it in your story where you're in a supporting role. You're really a mentor now. Yeah. Coaching is active. A good coach will get in your face if they need to, but mentoring, they come to you. They say, we got this problem here. Can you brainstorm it with us? What can we do? And you help them succeed.
Very interesting. And yeah, so you're in this process, the sweet spot is the level 4, the support, the leadership, the leader who gets to the support level.
Yes. And you'll find we measure this. Well, I believe that if you really want to empower people, you cannot scale culture. You cannot scale empowering culture in a company based on personalities or rules, because personality, you can't find those personalities and rules. Who's going to enforce them? But you base it on principles. And so one of the principles we teach is what we measure improves. And that's been around a long time. And we believe, we're certain, we know from experience, leadership can be measured. So the leader measures themselves, and the workers can measure the leader now. So Ron, the other day, what leadership step were you on when you took over that meeting? Oh gosh,
so this is transparent
0.
through an organization. So so again, that both sides know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so we're mutually accountable. Everyone is accountable. That's one of the core principles that we encourage people to follow. Everyone's accountable to the standards, regardless of title or position.
And Kevin, what are some of the biggest roadblocks as someone starts from 0 to 4 here? What are some of the biggest roadblocks you see with clients or leaders in general?
Honestly, once we put this in front of them and they understand it, by hearing it and feeling it, they tend to latch onto this. Workers love holding their supervisor accountable to what leadership step are you on. I put this card, an early version of this card, in front of my son, my teenage son. He's 14, sitting there at the computer, and he looked at the card. He got it right away. He looked at it for about 15 seconds, and he pointed at step 4, and he says, "What does it take for me to get here with you?"
Wow.
So that's the biggest obstacle. If they don't understand it, then they can't follow it. So it helps to have a coach to step them through the process.
I was just going to say, so it really is helpful in most cases to have somebody on the outside working you through this, because that's his work. I mean, the biggest obstacle is myself in this, right?
Yes.
My own ego, my own fears, my own experiences. That's got to be the biggest obstacle for the most part. So having someone bring you through, correct?
Exactly. And that's why we wrote the book in a story format. If I hear, I forget. If I see, I remember. If I do, then I understand. So if they see a story, if they're almost like they're in it, it's almost like they're doing it, and it helps them remember and understand. And having a coach to step you through the process eliminates the uncertainty and lets people move faster.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to talk to you about, and this is I think this is a huge obstacle, and I'm very curious your thoughts on, you talk about as quick as you can, and as quickly as someone can handle it, give power away. Now, this really connects back with these levels of leadership. How do you know when someone is ready to take that?
Yeah, that detective is the right question, because I've run across leaders, we've worked with leaders. Well, they're not capable of doing it yet, and so that's why there's a second tool. So let me share the screen again here and describe what we're seeing here.
And while you're doing that, what you said you have a 14-year-old. What is the oldest and youngest child? Now I'm super curious.
I see. Right now, our youngest is 15, and our oldest is he's a software architect. I think he's 36.
Wow.
38. I lose track. I mean, there's a big enough gap there that one day we had my daughter hates it when I tell this story, but we had a family photo with all 10 kids in the picture. And my son, John, our oldest son, was part of our company in the early days. We started our company to give our children opportunities to learn so that we could give them experience in business. They were going to make mistakes. We knew it was going to be painful, but it launched them on their careers. So John lived near us. He was doing all the software work for our company. And our youngest daughter, who must have been like 6 at the time, 7, she looked at the picture and said, "Why is John in this picture of our family?" And we said, "He's your oldest brother." And she said, "Oh, he is?" I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible parent.
Uncle John? I love it.
Yeah, so I think I got a little off track here with that story, but
no, it's all good. That was beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing. You were talking about when we know that someone's ready.
Oh, right.
Right.
So the flip side. With the leadership steps, that's what the supervisor is saying. How am I interacting with you? How am I interacting with my people? Well, here is what we call the levels of initiative, and these are wallet cards. We hand them out. They're part of the uniform. Everybody in the company has them in their pocket so they can print them out as posters on the wall. And the levels of initiative run from A to F.
Yeah.
And F is they do when told. Now, if you stop and think about it, most leaders in a company would be thrilled with that.
That's right. That's an A. This should be A. Kevin,
most companies,
this is wrong.
Yeah, they do exactly what I tell them. But that's not initiative. That is not ownership. So you're going to have a conversation and say, well, on that last project, where were you on the levels of initiative? Oh my gosh, I waited to be told. Okay, well, what could we do to raise that? So this opens.
So Kevin, sorry, this is used to actually debrief a situation too. Everyone's got their card and say, okay, where did I align?
Exactly.
Okay.
And in weekly one-on-ones, one of the things we do when we're transforming an organization, the first thing we change is the meeting format.
Because I want to get to that too. I've got that.
Traditional meetings are horrible.
Yes.
Okay. But the next level in levels of initiative, the next level up is ask what to do. Now you'll recognize this. This came from Covey, the 8th habit.
Yeah.
Okay. But we've adapted it to be very, very specific. So you ask what to do. Okay. What should I do? What's next? Then you go to this level where you recommend work. I recommend, or I'd like to. And a little step above that is I intend to. Oh, and now I'm starting to.
David talks about that, the intention, right? Trying to get people to say, and his own intention in theirs.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that's a big psychological shift. That was a big shift that David and I came in on the submarine. And then we get to this. So that's a C, recommending work, C plus intending. But if I do, and I come back and report immediately, that's a B. And when I do and report periodically, that's an A. And this, again, is a process. People cannot come in and go right to step A, because doing and reporting periodically looks the same to a boss as not doing anything, because I don't know what's going on.
Right.
And depending where they're at on this card, they know they're taking initiative. And by giving it a letter grade, we're saying it is better to take initiative than to not take initiative. And it naturally develops.
And so 2 questions. What's the best way to coach someone through this, as we talked on the leadership side? And then second question, biggest obstacles you see is from F to A. So how do you coach them through it, and biggest obstacle?
Well, again, it's got to be simple principles or people won't do it. What we measure improves. So worked with a major franchisee of McDonald's stores, and the workers decided, oh my gosh, we could make a chart out of this. And so they laminated a big chart on a version of something like this and put it on the wall, and their names. Then they'd move them up and down, said, this is where I see myself at, this is where I see the boss at, and they put it on the wall where the clients could see it.
Who put the names around? The staff self-identified or not? It was they
self-identified.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Because otherwise it's top down. I'm going to tell you if you're doing a good job.
Right. Wow.
Which is
very
horrible.
Cool. So, and what have you seen being the biggest roadblocks, except for, keeping
the
it
biggest
simple?
roadblock? Yeah. People look at A and B and they say, oh, I just need to be doing. And they keep overlooking that reporting back is essential.
Mm.
And so that's why there's this step, the C- step. I did, but I failed to report because I get an A for initiative and an F- for failing to report. And people will think, well, if I'm reporting back, that means the boss is going to check up on me. No, you're reporting back to create visibility, collaboration, communication, and clarity. If the boss is micromanaging, there's a problem. There's a conversation that'll happen with the supervisor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very great. Love this. So let's go to the next question, which is, obviously the reporting back probably comes out in a meeting. You talk a lot about meetings in the book. Tell us how to drive an effective meeting.
Okay. So love this story. Effective meetings, in my opinion, are collaborative.
Right.
They are. We shamelessly stole with full credit this idea from Patrick Lencioni, who's written some brilliant concepts in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Death by Meeting. This comes from real-time meetings, but the agenda, if you control the agenda, you control the thinking, and that's the kiss of death for empowerment. So instead, the people put burning issues on this agenda when they arrive or during the week as ideas come up. And in fact, meetings in highly empowering organizations, we encourage people to assemble process team meetings, to assemble process teams on their own, to assemble tiger team meetings, quick 20-minute meetings to find the next step forward to break through in something. The people put the agenda items on there. That means they're thinking, what problems are we facing? What needs to be worked out? And we lean heavily on Google Docs. It's a beautiful environment where everybody takes notes. You can see their cursors jumping around the documents. And we also start the meetings out with wins, fails, and learn froms. Quick reports where we celebrate wins, and especially we celebrate and laugh about the fails and the learn froms. The reason we started to put this into the meetings was to help overcome defensiveness, which in our experience, about 20% of the workforce struggles with some degree of defensiveness. And by teaching them to celebrate failures, laugh about them, and turn them into learn froms, it eliminates that. And it also creates great fodder for burning issues to talk about in the meeting.
I like this, wins, fails, because we do a kind of a high-low, but I like the fail better because we should be open to failing. Right?
Oh, yeah.
A low is just like I could complain about something else, by the way, but a fail to it sounds like you want to draw like, what have I failed at? The individual, not the company.
Right. Yeah. Well, what did you try that was noble and a good try and you fell flat on your face? Those are the best.
Yeah,
and we started doing that as a family. And one night, my wife, she said, well, my fail for today was it was Dad's birthday and I cooked him his favorite meal and I poisoned him. And that was true. We all got a good laugh about it. I got food poisoning from the meal, but it was a happy moment. We all kind of laughed about it together and nobody felt bad.
But also that's a learning, because if she wants to kill you, that was the wrong thing to use.
Yeah.
Hopefully she's not listening to this.
No, hopefully she is.
She is. We know that what you're going to try to do next. Don't you dare.
But by doing that, you're making it safe to discuss the issues.
Yeah.
People won't hide their mistakes. You never want people to hide their mistakes. Let's learn from them.
I love that. So learn froms are look, from my wins, my fails. Here's what I learned out of that. They actually come out of those things, right? And
even a highest level learn from is I learned from somebody else.
Right.
I learned from Ron last night. I read his book. What an amazing book, and I mentioned that in my review. Golly, the task mapping was brilliant. And the idea of putting up an unwanted task to the organization to auction it off. Oh my gosh. I was thinking, dang, I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, we called it InSource because the company was called Source. But yeah, that was a big aha moment for us, when we just thought, wow, and right when I thought I got culture right, there was such task misalignment that it was only halfway there. We had so much more work to do, Yeah.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. And we're going to use it and give you credit for it all over the place.
Yeah, no problem. And we can have a further discussion around it if you'd like.
Yes.
So, okay, got it. So I want to go back to the meeting. So it sounds like it starts with win, fails, learn froms. I put my agenda items in, and walk me through. I want everyone to be able to get a visual what this meeting looks like from start to finish.
Okay, good. And as a matter of fact, let me, if I may, let me tell you a story that will create a visual for you.
Love it.
You do not need Google Docs to do this. You can do this. So it was a scouting meeting, all volunteers. Those meetings were notorious for being boring, and they had a regional leader who had been a professional scouter for a long time, and my wife was in charge of this meeting. She said, how am I going to do this? How am I going to lead this meeting? And I said, hey, just use the fast flex meeting approach. So she walked in, chalkboard and chalk. She said, we're going to use a new meeting approach. We're going to list all the burning issues, the hot issues, even the nasty issues that need to be talked about. We're going to list them on the board. And then at the end, we're going to prioritize them, and we're going to talk about them. And at the end, we're going to score the meeting. How exciting was it? 0 to 100. And how interesting and how effective, was it? 0 to 100. So what we measure improves, right? So they started, everybody there had, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. And oh my gosh, we've got to deal with this issue. And then she quickly said, okay, which one should we talk about first? And they just wrote numbers next to the items. Then they dove into item number 1. Now, who created that agenda? The people. Right. And so are they interested in what's being talked about? Of course, it's their stuff. And they just burned through the items. They reached the end of the hour. She said, well, we're at the end of our hour here. We probably need to end the meeting. And the participants said, no, we're making progress. Can we just go another 10 minutes? So when was the last time you heard people say, can we just make this meeting a little longer? So, right.
I don't have an answer for that.
They knocked off the last 2 items, scored the meeting. It was like hundreds. And the career scouter said, this is the most effective meeting I have ever attended.
Well, I love that, but I want to, because I know people that are listening to this are going to challenge that with a thought. And so, good. For instance, in an organization, so I'm involved with a company called Vita Living today, affordable housing. So what we do is we have a weekly, I'll call it operational check-in. Key things that we just need to be looking after. But then we do a monthly strategic meeting, which is what you're talking about. Now, where people bring the agenda, they bring their items. Not that they can't bring that on an ops meeting, but how do you balance what you're talking about with key metrics that the company needs to focus on? Because you would need an agenda to cover those off. Over to you.
Right. Absolutely. Well, first rule of sales is if you want somebody to agree to something big, first get them to agree to something little.
Right.
So what we've given you there is the short, simple version. We believe that that these meetings where people bring the burning issues and the agenda items should be weekly, but you do need these key metrics, and you need to align people. People have to understand what they're doing and how it relates to the objectives of the organization. Why. So eventually, as that team starts to meet, you add the KPIs between the wins, fails, learn froms, and the burning issues.
Okay. So you're saying this is a starting place.
That's right.
Got it. Yeah. That does make sense. Yeah, got it. And then you would develop that and say, okay, we agree now that NPS score, customer experience, is critically important. Someone's going to own that, and they'll now report on that item and some type of cadence.
Yes. And the way we get that alignment is we say, look, we believe vision is a meta thing. It's a combination of the mission of the organization, which has to be super simple, make people happy.
Yep.
Unleash empowering organizations where people love their jobs. Colonize Mars. Okay, simple missions that people can understand. So it's a combination of the mission and a thematic goal, which is what the organization is currently focusing on for the next 6 to 9 months, all of us together, and the guiding principles of the organization or the values of the organization.
Right.
That's the meta. That's the meta vision. And we sit down with people and we say, what's our mission? What's the current thematic goal? And what are you doing to support it?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. How are you doing an awesome job, and how do you know? Well, what are your indicators? How do you measure it? So this is a conversation, and they come up with the supervisors, two of them working together, they come up with their metrics that say, this is how I'm supporting our mission, our thematic goal.
So it's interesting. I don't talk about this in the book. The next book, Scaling Culture, which comes out in the fall, which is the systems and processes, less stories,
Cool.
still has some stories. But one challenge I always had was, and I read, did you read 4DX, 4 Disciplines of Execution?
No, I haven't.
Read that book. It's great. It's about scoreboarding everything, essentially. And so 4DX has this putting in what they call leading indicators. So for instance, if my goal for the quarter was to gain 20 pounds of muscle, then my leading, so typically what happens is that's up there. And then I keep, how you doing, Ron? Yeah, it's okay. How you doing, Ron? Well, I'm all right. This week. So the leading indicator essentially says, okay, if I need to gain 20 pounds of muscle, then if my leading indicator, my weekly leading indicators are, I go to the gym 4 times a week and lift heavy weights, eat lots of protein powder and chicken, and I do other types of exercise. If I do those things daily / weekly, then I automatically gain the 20 pounds.
Yep.
I love that, except for when there was a project like you talked about. So all of a sudden, that to me, that's easy with sales, building a pipeline, things like that. But when it comes to, Ron, I need you to, your project that you've opted to choose is to build the company onboarding, rebuild the safety program. There's so much you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
4DX doesn't cover off that. Do you have suggestions? And it took us a while to figure out a system for that. I'm curious, what do you tell your clients to do when it's unknown? It's a big project and there is check-in points.
Okay. Yes. And so 2 things I think are really important here. How do you measure it? And there's a key guiding principle that successful organizations and especially empowering organizations follow. The principle is agility. You can't try to plan everything to the nth degree. You don't know what you don't know.
Right. Don't know what you don't know.
You got to define it. So one of the core principles of an empowering organization as we teach it is agility, which means action beats inaction. You get it out there quickly, improve it rapidly based on actual feedback. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it must not be perfect at first. So really, it must not be perfect at first. Get it out there rapidly, improve it based on actual feedback. And so people, they learn to take action and then try something. So how do you measure the progress on something like this? Well, KPIs can be a number, a leading indicator, or a trailing indicator. Yep. I've gained so many pounds is the trailing indicator. The leading indicator is I've worked out this much, many calories, this many protein grams, etc. Or it can be a checklist. Our objective in one organization, the objective was to know that the clients were being serviced rapidly and promptly so that they felt they were being taken care of.
That was the outcome.
That was the outcome.
Yeah.
But exactly how they were going to do that, they said, well, there's a lot we don't know about this, but we do know that 4 main things will have to happen. Mm-hmm. And if these 4 4 new systems are in place, then we have a high degree of confidence that they're going to be taken care of. So the KPI was just a checklist. 25% done, 50%, 75%, 100% done on these 4 items. So you can have a basic checklist, a series of milestones could be your key performance indicator.
Well, it's interesting. So what we've adapted to today, which is similar to that, because I'm always, as you read in the book, how do I keep things stupid simple? Like just so simple. And so what we do on major projects, so if it's create the company onboarding, what is the outcome? How do we measure that? No problem. That is clear. That we can have a debate about, a discussion, collaborate around. That should be the outcome. That's how we'll measure it internally. But then we said that's at 100%. And then what we do is we'll say, okay, you're starting at 0, you're ground 0. So every week you input your percentage complete. Are you at 5? Are you at 7? You're going to own that. And what's the one thing you need to do to move it to 8%, to 10%? Nice. And so we keep it very simple. Just one thing you're going to do that you don't really need to overthink it. You just have to, it's like if you're running, what is that? Where you jump over the
hurdles?
Hurdles, right? The hurdle thing.
Yeah.
You have to worry about the next hurdle because the next hurdle gets you a little farther ahead.
That's right. Yeah. And best workers, leaders, I think, focus on the next obstacle.
Right.
Rather than I've watched sometimes when this kind of transformation fails, the leader worries about all the obstacles. They measure the gap. Well, wait, what does it take to get these 10 things done? Instead of having trust and confidence, learning from experience that, you know what, your people can overcome those obstacles. They've got the smarts, they've got the brains. Let's just focus on the next hurdle and overcome that. So I love what you're doing there. What percentage are you at? What's the next step? The even better one thing we have run into is people are really good at choosing numbers. If you want numbers, if that's the outcome, they'll pick numbers all day long. So if you break that 100% into milestones, then instead of the 75% being an emotional number, you're a little more confident that you're actually making the progress.
Yeah. We've debated that too. And we used to kind of use a 25, 50, but then I found that people were just stuck at 25 versus like they were accountable to move it a little bit. And so we did make that switch. And it also, to be honest, it allows us to gauge, is someone realistic here? What do you mean? You picked up the phone and you have it at 80%. We're going to have a discussion now. Right?
Yeah. Well, and the cool tool borrowed from David Marquet, certifying. Right. In the military, they used to brief people. You sit down and they'd read from the process manual for an hour. And then they'd say, "Does everybody get that?" No, of course they didn't. They just sat there. So he turned it around. He'd say, "Are we ready to load live ordnance on the boat? And how do you know?" So make them certify it.
I love that.
So you're at 50%. Awesome. How do you know? How sure are you that you're at 50%? And how do you know?
That's right. And, I just wrote down, because we're going to add this, is what do you see being the obstacle for you to get to the next hurdle? What do you see as the obstacle? I love that. We're going to
add that. I love what you said, that the baby step, the small steps, that's crucial.
And, this brings me to, honestly, one of the most powerful questions that I read, and I think it was in one of your chapter summaries. And I love this because I say, look, I love being at 10,000 feet and right on the ground. I spend my time, not in the middle. And one of the questions that I've never asked, and I read in the book and I thought, this is a beautiful question, was, do you see anything slipping through the cracks? Where did that come from? I love that question. That is just gold.
Well, that comes from a real story.
About your family. What did the kids do? What did the kids?
No, it wasn't the kids. This was a transformation at a company. And one of the methods we use when we first step in, it's the same method Mitt Romney used to turn around the 2002 Olympics that were out of control. You interview everybody. You listen. You interview everybody. And and it's confidential, Delphic interviewing. You can use the information, but you can't share it with management. So in this particular company, excuse me here, in this particular company, interviewing people, found this one leader. They had invested all kinds of money in her, and she was sitting in this corner office. And I said, "What's going on? Do you see anything slipping through the cracks?" And she said, "Well, yeah. I feel like I'm the redheaded stepchild, me and my department. We're just sitting here, and we have opportunities that we could be earning money up from, but the partners of the company won't listen to it." And I said, "Well, tell me about the opportunity." And she started to describe it. And I said, "Tell you what, make a business plan, and I'll take you to the next partners meeting. You can pitch it. Not me pitch it. You can pitch it." She said, "Well, I've never written a business plan before. How do I do it?" And I said, "Well, first of all, it's got to be super simple, 3 pages, and show them what the opportunity is, show them some numbers, what it would take." She put this thing together, and it was a hidden gold mine for that company. It was slipping through the cracks. Nobody was listening to it. And so by simply asking it, making it safe for her to say, "I think we're missing an opportunity here," it was a significant increase in revenue for the company.
Well, it's funny because my version of that question would be something like, what are the challenges you see? Do you see any bottlenecks? I would ask questions around that, but it's mostly centered around the individual. I love the framing of, do you see anything slipping through the cracks? Because we're having a conversation about a movie we saw yesterday. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's, do you see, based on our vision, if we have a clear purpose of revolutionizing affordable communities, what do you see slipping through the cracks? Because that's probably a customer related question.
Right.
Or, I just love that.
Well, and it's not just, like you said, it's not just about me. I could see it slipping somewhere else. It's funny too how organizations will say, somebody will say, oh, I see something. And people say, well, you're new here. You have to be here 6 months before you can say anything. That is like so dumb. The new eyes see stuff.
All bad. But this allows someone, because the question's easy. The answer's difficult because people may not feel comfortable and have trust the leader because they don't have a relationship or whatever the case is. So the framing is so critical, the framing, and that is just beautifully framed because it allows them to be objective. Here's what I see slipping through the cracks over there,
Yes. So, well, how you ask the question is crucial. David Marquet's big on this.
Yes.
Any questions is way different than what questions should we be asking here?
That's right.
Any questions is intends to shut down conversation. And now there is a time and a place to shut down the conversation. When you're going to be on the stage in 3 minutes, you're going to ask leading questions. Okay, any other questions that we need to deal with? You're done. But if you want to open a discussion, you say, okay, what are we missing here? What problems do we have? Open-ended questions, make it safe.
Yeah, love that. I wanted to talk about, I love this, open floor versus open door. Tell us about that.
Open door policies are the kiss of death for safety in an organization.
And everybody talks about this. Oh, we have an open door policy. We have an open door policy.
Yes, and it's like, no, because what happens is now I can go and I can tell stories about anybody I want.
Yeah.
The manager now is going to take my monkey off of my back, put it on their back, and they're going to presume with their all-knowing, whatever, to go and solve this problem with the other person. But 95% of the time, there's a communication breakdown between two people. And you've got to get them talking to each other. Friedman's theory of differentiated leadership talks about, you need to reduce the anxiety in the organization. This triangling business where I'm going to the manager's going to talk for me, that just makes it terrible because inevitably the person's going to say, well, who said this is happening? And the manager is going to say, what? I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. And now anybody in the organization could be this hostile person that has this misconception about me. So no, the open floor policy says anybody can talk to anybody else. But if you're concerned, yes, talk to your supervisor. They will coach you. They will mentor you. They will help you feel safe with the conversation. And they must not take action. They will send you back to talk with that person and solve the problem. But if you don't feel safe with that conversation, they'll go with you. Ensure safety and make sure it happens. And if that doesn't work, then you escalate it. All three of you will then go up one level until you find a place where it can get resolved.
Or you could use the family mafia technique.
Yeah, but this works brilliantly, and it creates safety. One organization contacted me. They wanted to hire a new COO to fix their culture, and I said, "Great, let's have a free call here first." And it was a wonderful company with a great mission, but they were having this terrible infighting among the organization. And in that call, within about 30 minutes, we realized, wait a minute, the problem is open door versus open floor. Taught them the open floor policy. They implemented it. The culture completely changed. There was no need to spend another $100,000 a year to hire a COO. Problem solved.
Right. So just summarize that one more time, just so I want to make sure everyone's clear on what open floor is.
Open floor means anybody has the right to talk to anybody else about something. If you're not sure how to do it, you're uncomfortable, you go talk to your boss, go talk to the supervisor, but the boss, the supervisor, must not take action on their own. They will coach you, they will train you, they'll help you feel safe about it, and then you can go back and talk with that person directly to try to resolve the issue. If it's still not resolved, then the two of you will come and talk with the supervisor who will create safety and get the issue resolved.
But no process. This is free flowing. I can say what I want. There's no box to stay in here for the conversation.
Correct. But there are tools to help. For example, when you've got a real impasse and people can't listen to each other, we teach some tools of engagement, and one of them is dual reflection. So you've got Bob and Sue are upset with each other. Bob has something he's trying to say. Sue has something she's trying to say. So you pull them together and you say, Sue, what do you hear Bob saying? Not what do you want? No, what do you hear Bob saying? Oh, this is really insightful. Usually they can't describe it well. So she'll say what she hears, and Bob will say, oh, that's about 80% right, and he'll clarify. And then Sue will say it again, and he'll say, that's right. And then you switch roles. And Bob, what do you hear Sue saying? And usually by the time you get both of them, they understand each other, problem is solved.
I love that. I'm just making a note on that because that is beautiful.
But so what, we're not just saying, all right, boss, you're now a coach. Go do it. Well, how do I do that? You know, that's scary. You give him the tools. You got some great tools.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about this. I wanted you to touch on process teams and zone charts replacing org charts. That was
So traditional org charts, who creates that? The boss creates it. CEO. Top down. Okay. So instead we go to zones and roles chart. Now, in order to do that, you have to understand roles. Everyone in an empowered organization is a leader. But that does not mean that everyone is a supervisor. There are many kinds of leaders. You can be a subject matter expert. You can be
task mapping. That was a subject matter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got to learn more about your task mapping. So you can be a subject matter expert. You can be a champion. You can be many stakeholders. Anybody that cares or is affected by something is a stakeholder. And then there's the concept of a zone owner. There is an owner of a zone. So it's
zone being finance. Would that be a zone owner?
Finance is a zone, but it could also be monthly reconciliations is a subzone of the finance zone.
Right.
So, for example, when we wrote Neverboss, I have a ghostwriter. My daughter, Laura Shanae Crenshaw, is the ghostwriter of Neverboss. She's owner of story. Okay.
Love it.
She created Jeffrey. She created Jeffrey's World. She interviewed me for like 100 hours. I dumped all these stories on her. And she transcribed them all, put them all together into this amazing story. But so she and I would have this tussle sometimes. Well, I've got this great story here. Yes, you're owner of story, but I'm owner of book. And the story breaks the principles. We can't teach it that way.
Right.
On the flip side, though, she would come in and she'd say, oh my gosh, you've got this rapid empowerment roadmap here. Do you realize that when you put the one layer of that pyramid in place, it creates a problem? And the next layer of the pyramid fixes that problem. And my jaw dropped and I said, you're absolutely right. I never noticed that before. So you can do this, and a zone chart evolves naturally. If somebody wants to be a subject matter expert, they put themselves in the chart. If you need a process team spun up to fix some sort of a process problem, anybody can add that process team to the chart, and anybody can say, we need a Tiger Team meeting to fix this problem.
And Tiger Team meeting quickly?
A Tiger Team meeting is 20 minutes. We're going to get in, we're going to brainstorm a solution, we're going to find the next baby step, the next small step to start to get a breakthrough in something that's holding us back, and then we're going to disband and go out and try it.
And I assume you start that with, what is the outcome of this meeting, and how are we going to measure this or not?
Well, what's the problem?
Right.
Okay. Right. We start with what's the problem we're trying to solve? Okay. What do we want to see? And the outcome is always the same in a Tiger Team. Baby step, incremental change, progress, not perfection.
Last question I have, and then I'm going to open the floor to you to see if there's anything else you want to share. 5 levels of decision quality. That was really interesting. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It just blows my mind when we see people saying, I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to make that decision. We see this in political leaders. We see it in bosses. And it's like, okay, well, why are we making that decision? And finally realized that all decisions are not created equal. At the bottom, the worst level of decision is because I want it to be this way. Right? I just want it. My instincts, I'm a very, very, very smart person. My instincts tell me that this is the way it ought to be. And in some cases, you have to rely quickly on instinctive decisions, but you can't leave it there. So the next level up, level 2 in decision quality, is reasons why. Okay, well, I want it this way because. All right, that's an improvement because at least we're thinking ahead. But how often do we look the next step ahead and say, what's the likely outcome? If we do this, what's likely to happen? What are the unintended consequences. Beware the unintended consequences.
Mm.
And if you want even better decisions, though, the level 4 is principles. Principles are the principles of our organization, time-tested truths that are easy to follow, that guide the things to do when we don't know what to do. And the highest level of decision quality then ultimately is, okay, we've done this, we've tried the principles, and we're actually measuring the outcomes, and we know what the data is, and we can make smart decisions based on the data. So the decision quality improves over time, and by asking the team to say, wait, what level are we at here on our decision quality when we're making this decision? It results in better decisions faster.
Right. Yeah, great. Kevin, anything else that you think that maybe I missed that you wanted to talk about that you think is relevant?
Well, I think you've done a great job with your questions. This has been a fun interview. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I hope we will.
Absolutely.
In the future.
Yeah.
All this, it sounds like you've got a book, Scaling Culture book, coming out, which I'm anxious to read. Please send me a copy.
Well, I'm going to send 10 because each kid's getting one.
Yeah. And and I'm sure you've got I hope you've got some sort of simple model in there. Because that's huge. And we've got a simple model that we use called the Rapid Empowerment Roadmap. And I'll show that on the screen with you here.
Yeah, please. Yeah, let's have a look.
This is, let's see here, screen share. Okay, so this is the roadmap. It is a pyramid.
Yes, I saw this. Yeah.
And it starts with culture at the bottom.
Yeah.
But culture, and this is one huge point I'd like to make here. How do you scale culture? Well, and how do you quickly change culture in an organization? Well, if you try to impose your particular brand of culture on an organization, good luck with that. It's going to be painful and it's going to take years. But when I was growing up, my uncle made homemade chocolate ice cream, and I put that in my mouth and it just melted in my mouth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best chocolate ice cream I've ever had. How did you make this? And he said, Kevin, I think the best ice cream flavors can always benefit from the presence of vanilla. So in order to have a great chocolate ice cream, you start with a great vanilla ice cream, and then you add the chocolate. Wow. And when we say culture, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, what our parties are like, or, how, we're talking about empowering leadership, safety, exciting meetings, the motivation 3.0, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, just the basic stuff in an organization that everybody's begging for, and you don't impose that, you unleash it because people want it. And so you start with this culture level, and when that's stable, it's now safe and effective for people to speak up. You can move up to the next level of the pyramid and create clarity around structure, authority, and accountability. And accountability means mutual accountability. And then you can move up and build the capabilities of the organization to the next level of the pyramid. Then you can start focusing on making sure that what we're doing is actually effective. And then we get to this level, strangely enough, where now we're going to talk about the vision.
Sorry, just quickly on focus, saying no, being like, we're so focused, we don't do this.
Exactly. Steve Jobs says innovation is saying no to 1,000 things.
That's right.
And he's dead right. We have to focus on the crucial few and ignore the trivial many. And as an organization, we get good at that.
That's right. Yeah. Continue.
And we teach that as a principle. And at this point in an organization, now all of a sudden we're having a conversation about what is our vision? What's our mission? What's our current thematic goal? And how do we deal with opportunities and challenges that arise? And this really surprises people, because you'd think you want to start with vision in an organization. But when you've got an existing organization, they don't know what's possible. They don't know what their vision could be until the culture layers and the clarity and the capability and focus start to emerge. And then you're ready as an organization to have a conversation. Who are we? What do we want to accomplish? And instead of imposing it from the top down, it emerges from the freedom that you've
this
created.
Is a domino. One kicks the next, kicks the next. It's like the kind of a flywheel, essentially.
Yep. And then the top level of our model is the results. You're focusing on the results. What is our finish line? We don't want to succeed to death. We want to know when we've reached our finish line on a thematic goal and choose a new one. And credit, the sharing of credit, the giving of credit. Everybody gets ample credit for the success of what the organization's doing. That's our model, rapid empowerment.
Yeah, this is great. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. The content was incredible. It was a lot of fun. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I learned a ton, which we'll be sharing with our organization and putting some of this in the book. I hope that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I'm really anxious to get your book, Ron. Like I said, it was a very moving story. I was surprised at the emotional impact at the end of reading your book. And my daughter said the best compliment anybody can say is, I was crying by the time I was reading the book, but I felt a tremendous emotional impact. And we will be sharing your concepts and principles with our people as well.
That sounds great. Yeah. Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
I'll be calling you, by the way. I'm going to you need to send me your cell. You'll be on speed dial for fatherly advice as well.
That sounds great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Look, thanks so much, Kevin. And you stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
For more information on Kevin Crenshaw or anything related to Connolly Owens and scaling culture, check the show description for links and details. We'll be back next week with another incredible guest. Thanks. Stay safe.